Hey guys, Sean here. Welcome to the F1 Word and to the preview for the 2025 Saudi Arabian Grand Prix. Oh yeah, it is race week once again, and hopefully we'll get another really good race on Sunday around what is dubbed the fastest street track in the world. So last week F1 was in Bahrain, where Oscar Piastri became the first repeat winner of the season, but now it is on to the 6.174 kilometre, that is 3.83 mile, 27 corner Jeddah Corniche circuit for round 5 of the season and the final race of this triple header. As was the case last weekend, there will be 3 DRS zones to aid with overtaking, and they are between turns 19 and 22, 24 and 27, and down the long run between the final corner and the first corner. Now, as I'm sure you'll remember, it is a street track, so it won't be easy to pass on, but there are some good spots to try and make a move. So, of course, the end of a couple of the DRS zones offers up opportunities, especially into turn 1, where we've seen plenty of action over the years. The hairpin at turn 13 is a corner we might see a move at, and over the years the final turn has also proved a good place to overtake. However, since they moved the DRS detection point to the exit of that corner, it may not be worth it, as it can leave the overtaking driver vulnerable on the run down to turn 1. So it might be a case of staying close through there and then use that long run and zone to make a pass into the first corner. Now, with it being F1's 75th anniversary, I've been trying to include some historical moments in these previews for each race, but obviously that's a little bit tougher for newer tracks like Jeddah. But we've certainly seen some memorable moments, both good and bad, since its first race in 2021. At that first race, we had controversy as Lewis Hamilton and Max Verstappen went toe-to-toe at what was the penultimate race of the season, that Sunday featuring multiple safety cars, red flags, and several contentious on-track incidents. Mick Schumacher had a huge qualifying shunt in 2022, which, although he was deemed physically well, has confirmed he wouldn't take any further parts in that weekend, and that was the same year Charles Leclerc and Max Verstappen engaged in their DRS games at the final corner, with each of them absolutely determined to be behind the other at the detection point to gain the advantage down the straight, hence why that detection point was moved to the corner exit the following year. Silly? Yeah. Potentially dangerous? Perhaps. Good fun? Definitely. Since its first appearance on the calendar in 2021, the Jeddah Corniche circuit has hosted 4 races with 3 different drivers, Lewis Hamilton, Max Verstappen and Sergio Perez, taking all the victories and pole positions at the circuit between them. Verstappen has the most wins with 2 and Perez the most poles with 2, and so perhaps it's not a huge shock to hear that Red Bull have the most wins at Jeddah with a total of 3 and the most poles again with a total of 3. That is a lot of 3s, and 3 is also the number of dry tyre compounds available across a race weekend. And you know, if we add Red Bull's poles and wins together, we get 6, and 6 is also the number of dry tyres in the whole Pirelli range. Oh yeah, that's right, it is a double segue into tyre talk time. The compounds available for this one then are towards the soft end of the range, and so they are the hard C3, the medium C4, and the soft C5. That choice is a step softer than last season, which, as I'll go over in a minute, is a relief given the lack of variation in strategy in 2024, to put it mildly. That is also touched on by Pirelli, who say that the decision was taken with the aim shared with the FIA, F1 and the teams to create more strategic choices for the race and, in theory, more exciting and unpredictable racing. As for the track itself, we've gone from a very abrasive surface in Bahrain to a much smoother one, which is low on abrasion, but the track is still moderate when it comes to the stress put through the tyres, and so wear will still be high, especially as many of the turns are medium to high speed, which means the tyres get put through some high lateral forces. Graining is expected to be a factor early in the weekend, but should improve as the track cleans up. Track evolution will also be high, and so we could be looking at one of those great qualifying sessions where it's last across the line to take pole. Back to the strategy though, and last year's race was dominated by a rather dull one-stopper, with the majority of the field starting on the mediums before pitting under the safety car on lap 7 to put on the hards, which they ran all the way to the end of the race. There were some outliers, to be fair, with 4 drivers starting on the mediums and running very long, the earliest stop of those coming on lap 33, and 2 other drivers did start on the softs. But hopefully, with the softer nomination this year, we'll see a bit more of a mix of strategies across the field. The weather isn't, at time of recording, expected to be a factor in terms of rain. However, although the forecast says it will stay dry, it is going to be very warm, which will have an impact on strategy. And as this is a street circuit, there are not a lot of runoff areas, so the risk of accidents and therefore safety cars is high, with the safety car making at least one appearance at every race at the circuit in Jeddah. Multiple stops, lots of safety cars, drama, overtaking. Maybe we'll see some of that on Sunday. I'd take it. And your schedule for this one is once again an evening one here in the UK and across Europe, although slightly later than it was last time in Bahrain. So FP1 will get the weekend started on Friday at 2:30pm BST, and that is followed by FP2 at 6pm. Saturday's action starts with FP3 at 2:30pm with qualifying underway at 6pm, and it will be lights out for the race on Sunday at 6pm, and once again that is in UK time. And we've also got F2 and F1 Academy action supporting Formula 1 across the weekend, so plenty of action to look forward to. Now, before I make some more predictions, let's have a run through a couple of news stories and talking points ahead of the weekend in Jeddah. Now, first up, since the end of the race on Sunday, there have been a couple of stewards' decisions that are well worth wrapping up before we get into this weekend. In case you missed it, George Russell was placed under investigation for using his DRS when more than 1 second from the car in front, and it was determined post-race that the Mercedes driver, who was suffering with brake-by-wire and electronic issues, activated DRS on a straight between turns 10 and 11 after pressing a backup team radio button, which also serves as a manual DRS activation button, but instead of activating the radio, it opened DRS. Only in Formula 1. The stewards explained that the connection between the automated DRS activation system and the car failed due to issues with a timing loop provided by an external party, and that resulted in the FIA authorising the manual activation of DRS. The rear wing was open for a distance of 37 metres, which resulted in a gain of 0.02 seconds for Russell, but he backed off and gave up 0.28 seconds at the next corner to compensate. Following an investigation, the stewards decided that whilst it was technically a breach of the regulations, no sporting advantage was gained, and so no penalty was applied, and he kept his second place finish. Nico Hulkenberg wasn't so lucky though, as he was disqualified from the final result after the plank on his Sauber was measured and found to be below the minimum thickness of 9mm, and so as the technical regulations had been breached, the, quote, standard penalty of a disqualification was applied, meaning he lost his 13th place finish. And following a disappointing Bahrain, Christian Horner has acknowledged that whilst the Red Bull team have been able to minimise the problems they've been having by finding the optimal setup at times so far this season, races like Bahrain expose the RB21 shortfalls that they need to get on top of very quickly. He explained that the team understands where the issues are, but it is introducing the solutions that takes more time, and asked if they were experiencing different problems to last year, he replied, "Completely different problem. I think the characteristics are perhaps similar, but certainly the brake issues we didn't have last year." Added to all of that, Red Bull also need to expand the car's operating window, which Max Verstappen, Yuki, Tsunoda and Liam Lawson have all said is extremely narrow, with Horner adding that it is a focus for the team and over the next few races, introduced updates are designed to address some of it. That said, Horner did make it clear that the overall problems were understood, but explained that the tools, primarily the wind tunnel, have driven them in a direction that isn't replicating what they are seeing on track, which means they end up with a mishmash between what the tools say and what the track data is, so right now it's the track data that is driving the solutions. Unfortunately for Red Bull, their new wind tunnel, which is ahead of schedule, won't come into play until 2027. Until then, figuring out the differences between software simulations and the real world is Red Bull's biggest hurdle. And with the update set to hit the RB21 at Imola the next few weeks, could be critical for the team's season and potential championship hopes. Right then, time for me to make some predictions, and as always, please do not take these too seriously, just a little bit of fun, but if you do disagree with my picks, then you can let me know yours in the comment section down below, and last time, it actually went okay. Not great, but okay, and I'll take that. I was correct on Piastri for pole and the win, I know right, and Norris for P3, so 3 whole points, it's a miracle. But anyway, this week, things might be closer at the front, with Max Verstappen saying that this naturally should be a better race for Red Bull as the circuit offers up less degradation than in Bahrain, so that might bring them back into play with McLaren and perhaps Mercedes too. According to reports, the new Ferrari floor, which debuted in Bahrain, has given the SF25 a wider operating window. But I'll try not to get too excited by all of this, but the idea of 4 teams closely fighting for the win is a thrilling prospect. But let's see how things unfold. Reports, claims, feelings, and all of that are all well and good, but that doesn't always translate into performance. I will stick with the theme of my early season predictions so far by saying McLaren will be favourites again, and I would love to see Oscar Piastri make it 2 in a row for the first time in his F1 career, but he will face some tough competition from teammate Lando Norris, who will be keen to bounce back from a disappointing weekend overall in Bahrain, and as I say, if the others have closed the gap at all, it could be very tight. With all of that said, I am going to go for it and say that Lando Norris takes pole position on Saturday, but for the first time this season, I'll go as far as to say the pole sitter doesn't win and go with Oscar Piastri for victory with his teammate just behind. As for that final podium spot, I could go with Max Verstappen, given his pre-race weekend quotes seem a little bit more positive, or even George Russell, who given his start to the season could be seen as somewhat of a safe bet. However, because I am a naive idiot, I'm going to choose to believe that that improvement from Ferrari last time out was genuine and not track specific, and put Charles Leclerc behind the two McLarens in third place, but I'm fully prepared to be disappointed as always. As for the fifth best team, which you could call top of the midfield, I suppose, I'm tempted to go with Alpine given their strong showing last week, but I'm actually going to go with Racing Bulls for this one. But to be fair, that midfield is really unpredictable at the moment, so close too, so it could be any one of at least 4 teams who top that midfield. When it comes to some separate bolder picks, I'll go with Isack Hadjar in Q3 and at least a point on Sunday. A top 10 finish for Fernando Alonso to take his first points of the season. And finally, let's say Jack Doohan makes Q3 on Saturday for Alpine as well. He had a really good weekend in Bahrain, and it would be great to see him take another step forward in Jeddah. That is it then for the Saudi Arabian Grand Prix preview, but don't forget you can let me know your thoughts and your predictions ahead of the weekend in the comment section down below. And for the latest news, analysis and reaction from the world of Formula One, head on over to planetf1.com. But as ever, thank you for watching. I've been Sean, this has been the F1 Word, and until next time, goodbye.